Peace and love, everyone. Thanks for being here live. Appreciate it. Good morning, Ian. Peace and love to you all, dear souls, my friends. And thanks for being here at our Not Church meditation time, live or by recording. Listen later. I'm Peter, and today we're going to explore a powerful quote filled with fire and stillness and transformation. And it's from Jeanne Marie Bolivet de la Motte Guyon. I wasn't sure I could pronounce that. 17th century Christian French mystic and a really serious spiritual rebel in a lot of trouble all the time, known simply as Madame Guyon. And here's what Jeanne Guyon said, or wrote rather. A person truly humbled permits not anything to put him in a rage, as it is pride which dies the last in the soul. So it is passion which is last destroyed, and the outward conduct. A soul thoroughly dead to itself finds nothing of rage left. Did you ever have anybody rage at you? Especially a spiritual person? Whoa. So let's just let that sink in for a second here. And this isn't moral advice that she's giving. It's not finger wagging warning. It's not even psychological self-help. This is a mystical insight from someone who, as we heard from Mount Athos, if you die before you die, then when you die, you do not die, who died before she truly passed on. She died, she lost to her, she died to her false self. She lost her false self in the divine. And she spoke from that space, from what remained in the stillness, the peace, the clarity of union with the divine, with the beloved. So let's take a look at her words a little slowly. A person truly humbled permits not anything to put her in a rage. And think about what it takes to be truly humbled. And I don't mean humiliated, which is what happens when someone rages at you. They try to humiliate you. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about being crushed or devalued, but humbled in the deepest spiritual, mystical sense. And in this kind of humility, the ego no longer needs to defend itself. There's nothing grasping at control. No one arguing to be right. Nothing to protect, nothing to push against, nothing to attack, nothing to defend. In my own near-death experience, I touched that place beyond identity, beyond personality, beyond defense. And in that light, there was no one left to rage. I came back, and of course, the ego returned with me, but the memory of that freedom stayed with me and calls to me. And maybe it calls to you too. And then, of course, later on at the side of the highway, I had a similar experience during helping someone in a car wreck. There was no self left. And in this world, rage often feels justified. And we see a lot of it today. Rage and anger. We feel justified in that. And we witness injustice. And that's a good reason to feel rage, but and people are hurt, and so they rage, and people lie, and so they rage, and systems oppress, and that's real. All these are real things. And so rage builds in individuals, it builds in cultures. But Guyon points to something so much deeper than moral outrage. And we hear a lot of moral outrage these days. She talks about egoic rage, the kind that flares when our pride is wounded, when our illusion of self-control is threatened, when our sense of self is insulted. Rage, in this sense, functions as a defense mechanism for the ego. If the ego is absent or reduced, and we're truly humble in the mystical sense, then what remains to defend? If you read through the mystics, you discover that humility is a prime ingredient of spiritual transformation. And Guyon, she continues, as it is pride which dies last in the soul. And I'm not sure she really means soul. I think she means mind or self. But as it is pride which dies last in the soul. So it's still an attachment with the soul. Pride is at the root. Pride isn't just, it's not just arrogance, not average arrogance. I'm better than you. Pride is very different. Pride is the illusion that we're separate, the idea that I am me and you are you, and we are disconnected from the source of all being. Pride is the voice inside that says, I am the center of my life. I am the center of the universe. And it's the hardest part to surrender. And of course, it makes sense. Pride is super subtle. It can masquerade as strength, as self-confidence, and worst of all, as spiritual clarity, which is when it is at its most dangerous and self-deceptive. But it's so hard to let go. And maybe you've noticed that when the heart begins to soften, when fear fades, when desire lessens, pride still clings. And in the mystical Christian tradition, pride is often called the ultimate enemy. That's why it's mentioned in all the mystics as this beatific gift. It's the last veil, the final obstacle to be burned away in the divine fire of love. And Guyon says, so it is passion which is last destroyed in the outward conduct. And she's drawing a line between the inner and the outer. Even after pride dies inwardly, the body, the mind, the self, personality may still reflect it and react. Our habits, our reflexes, our ways of reacting, they take time to catch up. So forgive yourself should this happen to you. And this is true in pretty much all the mystical traditions I've ever studied. And the Yoga Sutras, which we're studying on Tuesdays, in the Yoga Sutras, it's the difference between samadhi, absorption into the divine stillness, and kaivalya, total liberation, when not even the memory of the egoic self remains, in union. And the Desert Fathers from the Christian tradition, it's the transition from purification to illumination and ultimately to the state of union or total liberation. It's in that state that we're talking about. And that's where Guyon ends. A soul thoroughly dead to itself finds nothing to rage at. No rage left. And that is radical spirituality. And she describes the soul after the death of the false self, or what St. Paul in the epistles called, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Or what the Sufi mystics call fana, which is the annihilation of the self in the beloved. At that stage, rage isn't suppressed. We're not holding it back. It's not managed. It's gone. Not because we've numbed ourselves or disassociated, but because there's no longer a self to be defended, to be offended, to be insulted. Think of water. You can throw a stone at it and it ripples, but the water doesn't break. Or think of the Tao Te Ching. I think it's in the 7th chapter. The highest good is like water. It benefits, nourishes all things without trying to. A soul emptied of pride, emptied of control, flows like that. But please don't make a mistake here. It isn't passivity or the image of Jesus meek and Jesus mild, as the hymn states. The saints, sages, and prophets of all traditions have often stood boldly for justice, as Guyon did, as Teresa of Avila did, as St. Francis did, standing boldly for justice. They spoke truthfully. and they acted with fierce compassion. However, their actions weren't motivated by rage or even just anger. They were grounded in love, in clarity, in charity, and a deep non attachment to the outcome because they know themselves as eternal beings. When you know yourself as an eternal being, the whole persona becomes a temporary outfit that you're wearing. So, what does this mean for us? We start where we are. We notice that when anger rises, maybe we can gently trace it back to its source. Not to blame ourselves, but to understand. And what part of me is feeling threatened by this? What part of my pride is hurt? What illusion of control was broken? And we can practice humility. Fake it till you make it in spirituality is a true thing. Practice of it. We can practice humility not as groveling, which God knows. I've been in my life sometimes, but as releasing, letting go of the need to be right, letting go of the need to win, to be justified, letting go of the story of the self, especially when we've been hurt, when we have justification for our rage. Letting go of the destructive rage because it's destructive not only to ourselves, it's destructive in the world. And so we can sit a bit in silence, take a few breaths. When you feel it coming on, the more you practice sitting in silence, the easier it is to access it. We let the beloved be the beloved in us. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. We trust that as we die more and more to ourselves, we will be more and more filled with love with a capital L. And in time, and it may take a lifetime or more, or it may arrive in a flash, rage will cease to be anything to cling to. It'll cease to be an action for you. And one can grow into this. Meditation really does help. It's not an instant fix like grace when you have suddenly a mystical experience and kaboom, bango, you're a new person. It's not something to cling to because that's not freedom. That's not liberation. Rage isn't freedom or liberation. Love is. The end of the attachment to the egoic self. That's where liberation is. Hey, Anne. Good morning, Kristen. Thanks for being here, everybody. So let's take a moment here. We've got to the bottom of the hour. Take a breath. Inhale. Exhale slowly. It's good practice when you're feeling rage coming on or anger arising. Let the wave of the breath pass through you. Like a tide going in and out, your breath. Being still. A soul thoroughly dead to itself finds nothing left of rage. Let's meditate together. Slowly breathing into your belly. Pausing. Using your chant or your image in your mind. Rising up your spine and out your nose. Following your breath. Feeling it inside yourself. Peace and love, everyone. Thanks for being here. This is number 18 in our Mystical Women series. Thanks for liking and subscribing. See you soon.